When I was a young child, I used to play a game with a friend of mine who was a singer. And that game would be something like, we'd play something and then one of us would shout out a situation or a feeling or something like that. And we'd have to immediately switch. So I would switch what I was playing and he would switch what he was singing and the lyrics he was singing to match that thing. Kind of like if I said anxiety. Or a man walking down a street feeling sorry for himself. Or someone that's really defiant and on a mission to do something. And the thing is, that is exactly what music is for and what it is very good at. So why is it that when most pianists learn the piano, they learn by trying to play the right notes in the right order and repeat those notes over and over again? Well, the answer is that most people that are learning the piano are learning backwards. So in today's video, I'm going to fix that. So let's get into it. So to give you an example, I'm going to use a piece that a lot of people learn, which is Chopin's Prelude in E minor. Now, if I was learning this by just reading the notes and playing them on the piano, then it would sound like this. Which was, for the most part, correct. I played all the right notes, I played quietly, I played at the right speed. But unlike at the beginning, where what I played was determined by the feeling or by the situation that me and my friend made up, in this situation, I've skipped that step entirely and I'm just playing notes. Now, if I try and play this anxious instead, it'll sound like this. And all I really did there was took the feeling of anxiety and mapped it onto the piece of music. So I played slightly quicker, slightly more erratic, because nervousness is a quick, erratic kind of feeling. Your heart rate rises, for example, you have that mild panic, and all I'm doing is playing with mild panic. Now, if instead I tried to play this with a positive sound, a happy sound, I might get something like this. And the difference there was that I played slightly louder, so more confidently. I spaced the notes out so that it felt like there was lots of space, because the feeling of being content and the feeling of being happy is a much more open feeling. It's more relaxed and it's more confident, so therefore I'm going to play in a more relaxed and confident way. But the question is, if you are going to let the feeling or the story of a piece of music tell you how to play it, rather than just playing the notes without thinking at all, how do you know what feeling the piece is supposed to have? Well, we can take the elements that are in the music and work out what feeling that represents. So, for example, the very first chord in this piece is an E minor chord, and minor has a much more negative sound than a major chord. So that already tells us something about the music. The music is also quiet, it's expressive, it's slow. All of these things can tell us how the music is supposed to feel. We also have a single singing note in the melody that's going up and down like this. So, minor, quiet, expressive, slow, and a single note on its own all feel kind of isolated or sad, perhaps. So then if I try and play it lonely, sad, isolated, how would I physically do that on the piano? Well, if you're lonely, you're probably kind of defeated and moving very slowly, so therefore I'm probably going to move very slowly at the piano. I might also want this solo voice to be heard because it's crying out for help or something like that. So now if I convert what I'm seeing in this piece of music to physical movements that embody the feeling that they represent, you might get something more like this. Now, the thing is, with a piece of music, it never stands still. It's always developing in some way, and it's always changing. So even if you feel like you know what that character is, that story is, that feeling is in one moment of the piece, that is going to change throughout the piece of music, which is what makes music exciting. It's a bit like if you're watching a film. At the start of the film, everyone's in a certain place, but halfway through the film, lots of things have happened and the situation has completely changed. And that's exactly the same here. So as we go, we're telling a story and we need to adapt in order to tell that story, rather than just play the notes. When I was in the depths of learning the piano, there are lots of tools that I wish I'd had. And that is exactly why I built an app called The Practice Room. The Practice Room is an all-in-one place where you can log your practice sessions, get statistics and insights about your playing. There are resources like theory articles, an entire pieces library with backgrounds for all the pieces, what you should be able to do before you play them, what you'll get from learning them. There are practice tools that will help you fix your playing, that will help you recognize chords and pieces of music, even a metronome. And I also do deep dive live practice clinics every 2 weeks on a very specific topic about learning the piano. So if that sounds of interest to you, then check it out with the link in the description. Okay, back to the video. So for example, this note here, it sounds like it's almost crying out more and then kind of sighing back down again onto this B. And also, these left-hand chords are falling constantly, which makes it sound like we're kind of sinking into the ground. So as the music sinks, we can kind of sink with it. One moment where the story feels like it develops a little bit is in bar 9 of this piece, where the melody goes up. And this, to me, feels like a moment of defiance. You've been sinking all of this time, and therefore you're kind of trying to break out of that sinking. And I've pulled that story directly from what's happening in the music, and then if I play it, I can exaggerate the story and make the music sound so much more interesting to a listener because they can kind of feel what's happening. Now, the interesting thing is that this isn't even just in classical music. This is in literally every piece of music, because there are always things that you can find that help you determine how it feels. For example, if I take the James Bond theme as an easy example, that has a musical idea which moves up by stepwise motion. And that stepwise motion sounds kind of unexpected because it's kind of creeping up chromatically, which means every note on the piano. And typically what we expect is notes from the scale. In this case, we don't necessarily get notes from the scale. We get that creeping up and back down again, which sounds kind of almost mischievous, but in a sophisticated kind of way. And the interesting thing is, when I think of mischievousness or espionage, I think of kind of tiptoeing around, trying to be out of sight. So when I'm playing this, I'm trying to play in that same kind of way to represent the feeling. If we take another example, let's take the Avengers theme, for example, as it's a pretty easy example for what it represents. That sounds something like this. Now this piece does something interesting as well, because it's in E minor. It's actually in the same key that the Chopin Prelude was in E minor. So it starts on an E minor chord, then it goes to C, which adds some kind of positivity, so it's like you're turning the darkness into light. Then it lifts up to a chord we're not expecting, chromatically, like the James Bond did. So that adds kind of an eyebrow lifting moment, and then it goes back to C before lifting, back up to E minor. And you can feel that in the music if you play E minor, C, lifting. So by knowing there's an unexpected chord there that's lifting up slightly, which creates that kind of positive, powerful moment in the music, then exaggerating that by making it a kind of surprising moment of strength in the music because it represents superheroes, right? Means that instead of playing something like this, using those same notes, you might do something like this. And suddenly, that exact same phrase with the exact same notes has more character because I'm playing it in a way that represents what it's supposed to represent. And it is actually thinking about music like this, as in the story that it represents and what the notes are that you are playing, that makes you a much better player because you physically play the piano much easier and better by kind of embodying the feeling that you're trying to represent. But it also means that you build up a massive amount of knowledge of the type of things you're going to see to represent certain things in music. For example, like in the prelude in E minor, if I wanted to make music sound sad and longing, I might play an isolated melody. I might play chords that repeat in a really kind of soft way so that I can represent exactly the same feeling that I've seen in a piece before. Or if I wanted to make something sound more like espionage and more kind of mischievous, then I might do... Or if I wanted to make something feel more powerful and confident, then I might do what the Avengers did and use big chords and maybe a chord that lifts up. So if you're learning to play the piano and you're learning to play a particular song or a piece of music, the first question that you should ask yourself is, what is this supposed to feel like? Or what story is this supposed to be trying to tell? And then after that, the way that you actually physically play that piece of music should be in service of trying to tell that story. Because no matter how simple or how complex the piece of music is, there is always a story that that piece of music is trying to tell. And that story can be as simple as a single emotion, or it can be as complex as a full, drawn-out story. And that doesn't mean that when you're playing the piano, you shouldn't repeat things, and you shouldn't try and work on technique and things like that. But the way that you do that should always be in service of something larger. You can even play a scale thinking about climbing and falling. For example. And a great example of this is a piece written by Elgar that could only have been written in 1919. So if you want to see that video, then head on through and I will see you there.